Welcome. My name is Anita Evans. I am a Colorado Parks and Wildlife volunteer. I do educational directing with kids out here in the Dominguez Escalante National Conservation Area, which is a very, very special area. Pinyon-juniper habitat is a very special place here in Colorado. We have over 5 million acres of Pinyon-juniper habitat, which is about 21% of all forested land in Colorado, the largest area of forested land in Colorado. Very special place. It also happens to be in a desert habitat, which gets precipitation anywhere between 7 and 11 inches of precipitation a year. So it's arid. There's not much water here. Water is the limiting factor. And it's really important to know that, because these trees here, this could be 800 years old, this juniper could be 800 years old. This pinyon, although it is only maybe 2.5 feet tall, is probably at least 20 or 30 years old already. It takes a long time for the pinyon junipers habitat, or pinyon juniper trees, to get established in the pinyon juniper habitat. Here in the juniper, pinyon juniper forest, we have lots of different animals that live here, one of which is the Pinyon Jay, which we're going to talk about. Pinyon Jay is a special bird, and it's in the corvid family, which is a very smart bird. So they have a lot of adaptations to help them survive. Some of the adaptations that they have help them with their symbiotic relationship with the pinyon pine. So the Pinyon Jay has no feathers around its beak because even its name says that, naked beak, part of its scientific name. So it has no feathers around its beak, because when it dives into the cone to get the pinyon nuts out of it, it reaches in with its beak to pick the nut out of the cone that has sap all over the cone, so it doesn't get sap on its feathers. If it would get sap on its feathers around its beak, then it could attract dirt, which would attract bacteria, and it would make it sick. So it is adapted to this environment and to the actually harvesting pinyon nuts with no feathers around its beak. Another adaptation that it has is that it collects the seeds from the pinyon tree in a group of about 50. It can hold 50 pine nuts in this special pouch in its esophagus. It's fascinating. So these 50 nuts, it will go ahead and collect in the fall during the short harvest season here in Colorado, which is anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, depending upon the year. It goes around and collects those nuts in groups of 50 and takes them and flies over to a spot in the ground away from the tree, up to 13 miles away from where it collected these seeds, digs a hole in the ground, buries them. It flies back to where the pinyon nuts are, gathers another 50 seeds, flies away from the tree, and buries them in the ground, remembers where it buries them. And it does this over and over and over again through the whole harvest season. It's a very busy bird because it wants to survive through the winter. It buries, one single bird can bury up to 20,000 pinyon nuts in a season. 250 birds in a flock of Pinyon Jays can bury up to 4.5 million pinyon nuts in a season. That's a lot of pinyon nuts. So one Pinyon Jay will remember all of those 20,000 spots, or 20,000 nuts where it buried them in the spots around the trees. And it can find, scientists have actually sat out in the rocks and watched these birds bury them, so they mark everywhere where those things are buried, and it's watched the birds go back to those spots and collect the nuts. And they've determined that on average, the Pinyon Jay will remember approximately 75% of the sites that it buried its nuts. That's enough nutrition for it to get it through the winter. So how does that benefit? We know it benefits the bird because it provides its food and nutrition, and it helps it survive the winter. How does it help the pinyon tree? Well, if those nuts that are very highly nutritious, high in oil content, would drop right below the pinyon tree, if they don't get eaten by other predators or other animals around in this area, then they would probably just rot. They'd go rancid and rot because even if because they're not buried in the ground, and it would not get nutrition or water, because water, remember, is the limiting factor in this habitat area. And this tree already has its roots spread out well beyond its crown. These trees, this tree is approximately 30 to 40, maybe 50 years old, and its roots would go approximately 4 times its height out away from the tree, just to be able to gather enough water for it to survive. So any other nut trying to germinate in this soil would not survive. Out there, 4 miles, 10 miles, 13 miles away from this tree, where it doesn't have any competition, it has a better chance. So if it is not eaten by the pinyon jay, then it has an opportunity to germinate and grow into a tree under the right conditions. If it has water in a little pocket there, if it has the right sunlight, if it gets enough warmth, if something else doesn't dig it up. So.